Hey all, and welcome back to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. In today's episode, we are going to look at some interesting facts about the Hidden Blade. Again, this is a collaboration podcast, and I have worked closely with Visions of the Past to deliver this episode. They have done another lore-filled episode on the Hidden Blade. That intrigued me, and this has been in the work for a few weeks now, thanks to Too Swift, who gave me the idea. So I thought, what better way to get some interesting details about the Hidden Blade than someone who's done an episode? So none of this, for anyone thinks, oh my god, he might have stolen ideas. I can assure you, none of this has been stolen from his episode. This is just interesting things I found from researching the games, gameplay, and even something I did on a very old YouTube channel. And quickly on YouTube, I'm just gonna self-promote here. YouTube is now going swimmingly where I can back up everything on here, and Spreaker has now added an option where I can autocast my podcast from here to YouTube and they get rendered perfectly. So quicker time to get them there means they're backed up quicker, meaning after this drops on Spotify and Google Podcast and Spreaker, I'll be able to drop it straight on YouTube. No faffing around for editing. Enough with my blubbering, let's dive right in. So the first fact is, in Assassin's Creed Chronicles India, which is an underrated game, highly recommend it, Henry Green's dad has a hidden blade that was shaped like a trident. This is a very unique design because hidden blades meant to just be a single pointed blade, where 3 points mean 3 times more damage. There was a modern day assassin, I might have the name pronunciation wrong, I apologise, by the name Shaban Daship, that had a bomb planted in her hidden blade that once activated, her brother Jasadip could destroy her body and level a floor off the building. Now that is dedication to the Creed. If you get caught by the Templars, you could essentially wipe out an entire office. That's both scarily dangerous and proper dedication. The next one is the first ever hidden blade was owned by Darius, who used it to kill Xerxes. Now, the difference is we've all been used to seeing the hidden blades under the wrist, but thanks to Odyssey, which gives us a first look at Darius, his actual blade was mounted on top of his wrist, worked in a similar way, but it was on top, which is kind of a pretty cool design. I'd love to see that in the future. The next fact, the wielders of the hidden blade usually lost a finger when using the blade. Now, the issue with this is it became very common for enemies to spot the assassins, hold your fingers up, oh god, that guy's missing one off of his head. So Altair, using the Codex, as we saw in Assassin's Creed 2, was able to change it where it negated using the loss of a ring. I think it's the ring finger. I'm not really used to which fingers thing. I've never been married, so I don't know on that one. But one little twist on it is some brotherhoods have actually used symbols to designate the loss of a finger, from tattoos to branding. Now this still can make you, an obvious standout. But if you watch the Assassin's Creed movie, you'll see that the Spanish Brotherhood actually still cuts off their finger, even though there's no need. This must mean they're more of a traditional brotherhood who stick to the roots. So as well as the assassins have evolved over time, I'm getting tongue-tied, I've only had a cup of tea. As the assassins evolve over time to suit their needs, the hidden blade has had to evolve with them. You can't have a same blade all the time, it has to change. And we have seen this evolve from the foot blade in Chronicles of China to the shock blade used by Sean and the pivot blade which was famously wielded by Connor. This also links to fact 1 where Henry Green's dad had the hidden blade which was a trident. See, all tying in, I'm very good. Now, as we're talking about the pivot blade, this is something that's been on my mind for a while. So fact 6, is it 6? Yeah, 6, sorry, brain. Fact 6, Assassin's Creed lore could be wrong regarding the pivot blade. This is a very interesting fact about the hidden blade itself. Now, when you play Assassin's Creed 3, Connor gets the blade off Achilles, meaning Achilles' Brotherhood, which I believe, because I haven't played in a long time, was in Rogue, must have used a formation of the pivot blade. So therefore, Achilles should be a famous user of said pivot blade, unless he's had it in storage. But the other person, and this took, when did it come out? The remaster. I studied that game in detail for a project that didn't go very far, but I studied it. And I noticed if you pause every combat scene in the first half of Assassin's Creed 3 and Remaster, you'll see Haytham Kenway also uses a pivot blade. Now this is very intriguing because his hidden blade was given to him by a former assassin by the name of Miko in 1753. So either this is the animators, and I can't fault them for this because at the time it might have been easier to reduce the animation workload by creating a single animation for both hidden blades, Connor's and Haytham's, or this could mean that actually the pivot blade is older than Assassin's Creed 3, which means that the famous users shouldn't be Connor, and I should be using his proper name, but I don't want to offend anybody by getting the name wrong. So I apologise that I'm not using his full name, I just don't want to offend folk by getting his pronunciation wrong. So that means instead of the Assassin's Creed lore reading famous wielder Connor, shouldn't it read Miko, Haytham Kenway, and possibly Achilles? Now, as I stated, this could be the simple fact that the design team at the time were kind of like, well, there's no point creating a standard hidden blade animation and then creating a separate animation for Connor. But I think they could have done it by taking the same character model from 2, but that's a different fact. So yes, the pivot blade is a very unique blade as it allows combat and stealth, but it could have been used more than just Connor, and the Assassin's Creed lore should read famous uses Achilles, Miko, or Haytham, or all three. The next interesting fact is one I really like, but it might make you look at the games differently. The hidden blades were too flimsy for combat. Now, as we just talked about the pivot blade, I'm not going to count that because that was specifically designed to be a hidden blade and a knife. Now, I don't think they would have used the blade and the pivot. I think they would have used a sword and the pivot. That would have made more sense. But the blade itself, because of the metal that was used, was like iron, copper, stuff like that, would have been very flimsy. Now, if you were to fight in combat, you'd have to get really up close and personal. Now, the reach of a sword is a lot longer than the reach of a dagger or a blade. So using just a hidden blade in combat, as you see in number 2, number 4 tries it, and number 1, I think number 1, I'm sorry, number 1 was never remastered, so my memory's going back as 2007. Bear in mind I'm 24, this is a lot of years to remember. I'm very old, I feel old. So I don't know if Altair did use combat, but I know Ezio did, and this is kind of wrong, because if you watch the trailer for Revelations, you see an older version of Ezio lose the hidden blades in combat, they get chopped off by an axe. So how can they use them in battle? Now, this will link on to the next fact, but I'll drop it in here. We do know that some Brotherhoods did use a metal bracer on top of the hidden blade for deflection. So that would have helped, block incoming swords, and it would have been very good for a shield. But I don't think if you're in full combat, blocking a sword with your, I'm going to say left because I'm dominant with right, so I'm going to imagine Al's fighting, with your left hand, and then stabbing with your left or with your right would have been a waste of time. It would have been easier to deflect with left and then use a sword, a spear, or an axe with your right. Could be wrong because I've never done any medieval combat, but in my eyes, the effectiveness of a hidden blade in combat is useless, is non-existent. So to be in the games is kind of a weird idea. They should have done what Unity did, and that was rule it out of combat whatsoever, because that is more of a true Assassin's feel. And the final fact of the night was one that I never knew existed till last minute research, to be fair, was that for a time being, Altair had come across a metal that was of Isu origins. Again, Isu making a big deal in the Assassin's Creed universe. Ooh, spooky. And this made the blades stronger, which means effectively if you blocked with a hidden blade, it wouldn't break on combat. So meaning they were more durable, more effective in combat, so they could have been used to fight. But this was during Altair's end of his lifespan, so this would have taken place between 1 and 2 after the game had ended. But the other issue was, before Altair changed his codex to remove the ring finger, I'm going to go with ring finger because that sounds about right, he realised that the ore was running out and he couldn't keep predicting hidden blades. So sadly he stopped, and hidden blades went back to a basic copper and steel and iron that was used for all the mechanisms, which means that every assassin that's used it since has been using standard material. So that must be why they started to use metal on a bracer to deflect the blades, because the blades are no longer stronger. See, tie-in. And now I'm going to throw in a bonus for you, because I only found this out like 20 minutes ago because I've been playing Origins. The hidden blade didn't actually require loss of a finger at first. It was possible using an earlier design, as demonstrated by Layla and Bayek before the first mission. Spoilers, you could, by flicking the wrist upwards, negate the hidden blade attacking the fingers. See, because Layla did use Bayek's original blade, and the codex wasn't changed to Altair, so that blade would have always cut off the finger. Now, Bayek lost a finger when he assassinated the hippo, so he must have changed the way his angle was, because originally they used a ring with a bit of string to push up the mechanism, whereas later it was changed for a button for the wrist to go up. So what must have happened is, when you lifted your pinky finger up, the blade would have extended, cut off your finger, ouch! Whereas with the flick of the wrist, you can move the entire wrist out of the way of the blade, saving said fingers. But somehow Layla and Bayek was able to figure this out before the hippo incident. I would like to point out that before the hippo killed the hippo, I don't know if that was just the designers not wanting to spoil the story, because it is such an impactful thing in the lore that you lose a finger for the blade, so it would make sense for the animators to, when you first get it, if you're just doing side quests, you don't want to be losing a finger halfway through side quests, because it's not a pivotal moment in the story. So that could be that, but Layla was able to use it in the modern day, and she was using Bayek's blade, so I don't know why Layla didn't lose a finger. Maybe she's just clever from all the research. We never know, but it's a mystery. So that was some interesting facts about the hidden blade I have found. Thank you all for tuning in. Next week's podcast is going to be another surprise one, because I have a lot of topics in the wings. When I first started this, I expected to be running dry of ideas over in episode 6. Here we are on episode 8 or 9 on Losing Track, and I've not run out of ideas yet. So thank you all for tuning in. You can check this out on all platforms, and it should be available on YouTube by tomorrow morning at the latest. Thank you again, and hopefully I will see you all next week.